victory. A little fortunate there. You know, they got that 60-minute game earlier on and then a little bit longer as well. They bounced back. They got the 3 points. Memory of Michael really respecting Dwurst here, banning away that Xingqian.
It makes perfect sense as well. Don't want to allow one of the top players on Obey, some of his favorite gods, and Odin being eliminated as well is also just a shot to, I mean, 3 different players on Obey if you think about it, considering that there is just so much potential for any of these guys to pick up a god and roll with it.
So big first pick for Michael. Interesting to see that it's just trying to strip it away, I think, from all of the frontliners out of Obey.
It's one of Jelly's go-to gods. It does leave open the RDO, however, so that could be a potential solo lane pick or in the support role for Jelly. Really depends on what Dwurst and Jelly want to do there, but with that Raven being locked away, that also is leading me to believe that that might be an RDO support.
You never really know the direction of Obey. I wouldn't count anything out too soon. Raven could go anywhere. I think RDO could go anywhere realistically for them as well. Terra paired up with the Sobek. A lot of control coming out of both teams, honestly, because Raven can slow you and root you in place.
Oh, this is actually a perfect composition so far. If you're going to be running that Thoth in the mid lane, you want something that can peel very efficiently for your hyper carry Thoth and make sure that he can safely approach that mid to late game spectrum.
Sun Wukong yet again. Obey Alliance really prioritizing this pick. Probably going to go for Mifflin. I'm expecting Raven, probably Dwurst, RDO for Jelly. Those are my predictions for at least Obey.
I think that it could go, it's 50-50 whether Mifflin wants to take the Raven or the Sun Wukong. I think that mostly depends on how he's feeling today, but loving the immediate third ban choice by Obey. Taking away that Nemesis just ensures that In Memory of Michael won't have that opportunity to try and look to eliminate the front line that way.
Well, RDO's whole goal in these teamfights is to be very hyper-aggressive, try to get in the thick of things, and a Nemesis that's going to be looking to blow you up, it's a good idea to take that away. But another goddess that has the same luxury as Nemesis is the Serket.
Although a little bit more difficult to pull off, if you ask me. Serket requires quite a lot of execution. So for Jumpa, he's going to really need to be smart about his positioning and when he chooses to go in. He can't be the initiating factor, otherwise he'll find himself probably just getting locked down by the entirety of Obey.
When was the last time you saw an Uller being locked in for competitive play? Obey Alliance on Zaxi specifically really loves this god.
I'll be honest though, when it comes to Uller and the box guys, all of them choose to do their 1v1s anytime they want to show who's the best hunter in the SCL. It's always the default Uller matchup. That's just one of the players and one of the gods, I should say, that really, if you can execute Uller's kit, you have so much laning pressure.
But in the PC side of things, it's always the on-her versus on-her joust kind of deal whenever you're trying to really prove yourself against the opposing hunter. But either way, Uller for Zaxi, we saw what he was able to do on the Jing Wei earlier on today against his set and Elevate, but this time around switching things up, probably going to be looking to play hyper aggressive.
But the heavy pressure between this Uller and actually it's Jelly on the Sun Wukong.
Wow.
Let's talk about a throw out, but I would not have anticipated that. Although RDO can fare just fine in that solo lane role, either way, Jelly and Zaxi are still going to have very proficient clear for that dual lane role. So with this in mind, Memory of Michael should be careful that Jelly and Zaxi don't look to just push out the dual lane and then invade, although I don't see that being a possibility.
That's one of the options that you really want to try to exploit against the Terra, because her level 1 is probably the weakest out of all the Guardians. You don't really have your dash combination between the root stun. Sometimes you want to get the stun just for the clear, and then that means that you're not going to have the monolith dash until level 3 for quite a long time, and that's why Inbound has rotated to the mid lane, trying to alleviate some pressure for Crimson as their own speed buff is going to get invaded.
Well, Obey are doing the standard play where they have Jelly actually starting off in that solo lane with Dwurst, which makes sense considering that Dwurst might not have super insane clear by himself, facing off against what could be potential heavy pressure from the solo lane by Delny.
And both hunters are just starting off with a Bombus Mask, getting their own red Zaxi, jumping onto Kedshi. The stun is good, forcing the beads, poking out Keji. Not the best start for a Jingwei.
Not the best start for a Jingwei, but Keji is still incredibly safe on this goddess. She has so much mobility and a lot of safety netting in her kit with her ultimate that it can be incredibly difficult to lock her down. If Zaxy's able to find that axe stun and unleash his full combination on the Jingwei, then we can start to talk about finding that first blood potential.
That one play from Zaxy, though, is going to slightly snowball him in terms of outpacing Jingwei for these jungle buff clears. Being able to rotate for oracles first. Purple buffs have been stripped away from both sides as well. And as long as Zaxy can keep up this pressure, he'll be consistently half a level to a full level ahead.
The primary concern for Zaxy is how he manages his mana, because the mana issue with Uller in the duo lane is so prevalent due to just how much it cost him for every single ability.
Do you expect an early Transcendence because of the mana issues for Uller, or do you expect the traditional Devourer's Gauntlets?
I would probably have to favor the Transcendence in this matchup, just because Zaxy probably isn't going to be able to keep up or have the same sort of power spike if he doesn't go Transcendence. So it's probably just safer all around having that mana and the initial power spike to his advantage.
Jelly still sitting around in this solo lane as Jumpa has made his presence felt a little bit. It's very difficult as a Guardian, a Guardian that's name is not Artio, to be left alone in the solo lane. So therefore the Circuit trying to alleviate a little bit of pressure for Delny until he hits level 5. And therefore the Soba can be super safe without lurking in the water.
Jumpa is also probably going to be lingering around this solo lane side because Doris is probably the most punishable member on Obey Alliance for the starting phase.
Well, as long as Jumpa remains at level 4, Doris doesn't really have much to worry about of the last breath. Mifflin and Delta Marie positioning themselves around those elementals, doing a good job controlling those neutral camps.
And that's exactly what Obey needs to do, considering that their draft is a little bit more favored towards the early game. Delany expending his ultimate just so he can get the secured lane clear. That way he can back to base most likely.
Not only that, he gets the mana return, so he's going to be able to clear additional waves if he needs to sit back and farm it up. Circuit making the rotation because the blue and the speed is rotating. Obey Alliance are looking to invade for the second time this game.
And Jelly already looking for the 72 transformation, finds the Tiger Stun onto Jumpa, but with the return ultimate from Jumpa, that might be enough to take him out for first blood.
He's not healing. It's 100% healing reduction. That will be first blood. Jumpa with a nice play, even gonna be able to secure their own speed buff. However, Obey are not done. They actually strip away the blue buff as Dwarves has committed fully. Didn't even need to use Hand of the Gods for that one.
Heavy credits there though to Crimson for just being very aware of where his jungler was on the map and which direction he was going to be throwing Jelly, so that way he could ensure he got enough damage off to kill that Sun Wukong.
That's the telltale sign of a lot of successful teams, how well the synergy is executed between your mid position and the jungler. Communication is key in competitive SMITE, and that right there just goes to show how much synergy between Jumpa and Crimson have.
And we caught a glimpse of it just a few seconds ago, but Keji actually looked like he was out trading Zaxy in that duo lane. Zaxy's still sitting around half health, hasn't gotten a chance yet to back and finish his boots, and that's just one of the many disadvantages against the Jingwei for an Uller.
About a 200 gold net worth difference from Zaxy and Keji. Also, a slight experience lead. However, the timing of the backs are so important for Jingwei because of the passive. You're able to just really get back to the lane as quickly as possible, faster than almost any other hunter, unless you use your Apollo ultimate to get back to the lane, and that's why he's able to do that poke.
And this time, in memory of Michael looking to get in on that global farm. It seems as though Obey Alliance were able to secure those fire elementals yet again, though.
Not able to really do much after the fact, as Dwarves is just boxing out Delny. Jumpa has made the rotation, and this is a point in time for Guardians in the solo lane to be very mindful about these rotation ganks out of the jungler. Jumpa does so much burst damage.
And that's just due to that poison kiss. You don't want to have to deal with the Cobra's kiss from Circuit. It's It's very potent having that reduced anti-heal, especially against a god like Artio that kind of relies on that sustain during her solo laning phase.
As long as Jumpa can gank Dwurst before the cripple field comes out in Druid form, that should be a free kill almost every single time. However, Dwurst needs to survive the initial burst fire and then prevent the zigzags just like that Jumpa engages on Delta Marine. Now, I like the fact he holds onto the ultimate, doesn't want to commit there, but now he's in a lot of trouble, forced to use it defensively.
And inbound, actually, just to make sure that his jungler can make it out of that one, goes ahead and expends his ultimate. Crimson looking to fire the long-range Final Judgment, decides otherwise, though, upon seeing Jelly rotate over.
Surprised to not see the trigger being pulled by Crimson, at least force out the ultimate out of Mifflin in response. I believe the overhead kick was expended, so it was a must for Mifflin to use his ultimate to kind of juke out Crimson's ult.
Mifflin didn't really have much options there. He used his overhead kick in order to avoid the stun from inbound, except right now, Delta Marine in a lot of trouble, getting poked out pretty heavily from that route.
I'm not too worried for Delta Marine. This is a reoccurring theme for me, at least. I've seen this story before. Delta Marine gets poked out in the early game, maybe gets bullied, might die here or there, but in the late game, he makes his presence felt. Mifflin diving that tier 1 tower, poking out Crimson, and gets away scot-free.
And that's one of the beauties of having that overhead kick for the Robin. Doesn't have to eat that tower shot. Had he connected, he probably would have been able to find that first kill for Obey, but unfortunately, Crimson just getting away with that one.
Little update in the Hunter role as there's tier 2 Devil Gloves for Keji, whereas Zaxi going for the Warrior Tabby, still tier 1 on the Transcendence, probably will finish that item up in about 3 minutes.
Looking to save as much gold as possible, most likely, so he can be as close to finishing off that item as he can. As long as he isn't forced into backing, he can probably continue to sustain through that boom buzz and provide himself with enough farm on his next back to finish off that Transcendence.
Always a little bit of action around these Harpies. Are jumping over those Harpies onto Delta Marine. The communication not on the mark there as Delta Marine's going to get shelled by Mifflin. Survive for the time being. Great safety for Delta Marine.
Pretty unfortunate there. That was a solid mindset, and you can see how potent that combination actually is, considering that it was still able to take Delta Marine down to like 20% health just off of Jumpa's kit alone.
I like the risk there because there wasn't much to follow suit. It was beads being downed already from Delta Marine, as we saw inbound forcing it with that root combination about a minute ago, and that was a huge missed opportunity for memory of Michael. If they can ever find a kill onto Delta Marine, now Mifflin doesn't really have as much pressure as he would want to rotate on the side lanes.
They still have a slight window of opportunity, though, considering that Delta Marine's beads are still down for another 40 seconds at least. All you really need from Jumpa is just for him to connect his taunt with his dash, and if he hits all of those, he gets enough poison stacks. The following in hand afterwards should deal a large amount of damage.
Already making the rotation in the dual lane was Mifflin. I think Jumpa wanted to hope that Zaxi would play aggressive and jump in, but Zaxi's not one to just kind of fall in for that little bit of a bait. It seems that Elementals are going the way of Obey Alliance, but caught out of position is Delta Marine. He's left alone. Jumpa is on cooldowns for a little bit longer. His ultimate still needs about 30 seconds or so, so there's not too much action here as Memory of Michael are going to have to retreat slightly.
And inbound just getting completely punched out by the Robin, but Dwurst is in a whole world of trouble as Delany cleans him up for the second kill on a Memory of Michael.
Did I say 30 seconds? I meant 3 seconds. He puts the gank onto Dwurst instead, just like that. The Circuit poisons are too much to handle for the RDO. Now, probably looking to build that Warlock Sash, maximizing the health potential.
That would be a strong asset for Dwurst, considering he's been left alone a decent bit here, and understandably so. You kind of just hope that your RDO is going to be able to secure their own buffs and farm, especially since Dwurst opted for the Hog just to be extra safe. But Mifflin wants to put pressure onto Crimson and potentially even Keji, although Keji being Jing Wei is a lot harder to punish with a gank.
Mifflin going for the mobility option, probably trying to finish off that Masamune, getting the movement speed, getting the protections as long as he's closer to a lot of different opponents, stacking up to 5 times, and already Obey Alliance thinking about trying to go for these right side mid Harpies. Jumpa without his ultimate can't really do too much about it, and thus far, 11 minutes into the game, no real sight on the Gold Fury quite yet.
Neither side really has too much potential unless they're able to find a pick. Still, Keji trying to just finish off those Devour Gauntlet stacks. You don't really start seeing the power benefits from them until around 45-50 out of the 70, and it's just a lot easier to play it safe at the start rather than go all in and overcommit.
Whereas Zaxi is still working on his Transcendent stacks to follow. It's 13 on his side, so trying to fight fire with fire, and the physical power mana fight should go in the favor of Zaxi. He has the red buff alongside Keshi, so we could see some fireworks on the left-hand side. Both of these teams grouping up for the Oracles. Delta Marine throwing out the Stellar Burst. Looks like it went for a 1-for-1 trade. Terra's Blessing being used as Jumpa. Took a little bit of poke, so he's going to have to disengage and bound. Not on the mark with a Rube, but Mifflin jumping over the top and sprint being popped.
And Inbound forced to pop that sprint actually to try and get away, considering his dash was already on cooldown, trying to lock down Obey in that Gold Fury pit, but that's actually a very fortunate escape for Inbound. If Mifflin had been a slight second faster, that could have been a kill on Terra.
So much action just around those Oracles alone. Just goes to show how important every little thing is. And Jelly is going to take a spill here as Jumpa's ultimate was too much to handle. Nice pluck coming from Delny, lurking in the water. Can't really chase down Delta Marine simply because of that Disapparate form. Perfect tail flip, preventing Dwurst from connecting on the stun.
And Delta Marine has just had to be absolutely on the lookout every single time for popping his Disapparate. There are so many members on In Memory of Michael who can force out this form that it doesn't leave a whole lot of playroom for Delta Marine to make mistakes.
Despite getting poked out, Delta Marine has been on the better receiving end of the experience because Crimson just now hits level 11. Delta Marine has been sitting pretty there for a decent amount of time. We're going to see the second relic out of the mid-mage from Obey first.
And either way, it's still going to work out pretty well, though, for Erupt Crimson, because with Delta Marine being pressured so often, it just means that Crimson is a little bit more lax in that mid lane, gets a little bit more time to farm up, which is ideal situation for a Thoth.
Doesn't seem that Zaxi's poke is going to be that detrimental to Keshi any longer, but the burst damage is going to be strong. It's 30 seconds in between every single wave, unless Keshi elects to go to rotate back Harpies just for the lifesteal.
But forcing out Keji is all that Obey Alliance wanted to do, as now their next target seems to be the Gold Fury. Whether or not they want to bait somebody in to look for the kill or actually commit, seems as though they want the fight more.
Inbound was just enough of a presence to force Obey off of that Gold Fury. No real action there from either team, not wanting to make the first biggest mistake out there. Beautiful pluck onto Mifflin, but that's a Robin that's sitting at level 11, does a lot of damage, can absorb even more, and that's not the ideal target you really want.
Inbound able to find the route onto Mifflin, but again, that's not the target that Memory of Michael wants to focus on, at least not with Crimson's kit. Final Judgment, he's trying to reserve it very evidently for Delta Marine or Jelly should he get fully caught off in Jumpa's kit.
The non-rotation from Dwurst favoring out his team heavily as he strips away not only the speed but also the blue buff from Memory of Michael. Getting that for himself and taking that away from Delny means that in this next team fight there's going to be more spammed abilities, and as an RDO, that's what you're really relying on, just constantly using your whole kit and switching stances.
Same story could be said though for Delny. He's going to be hurting without having his blue buff. That 10% CDR actually does make a pretty significant difference for the solo laners in these team fights, considering that you don't have to have a Breastplate of Valor or any sort of CDR item built on just to get that boost.
Still working on their Warlock Sash stacks. 39 for Delny, only 26 for Dwurst. Progressing throughout this game as we approach the 15-minute mark. Still, neither team wanting to fully commit. Delny is actually going to accidentally pluck out Dwurst. He's going to get rooted into place to cancel. Wasn't in range for that tail flip, and Dwurst just being a big old meanie here in the solo lane.
That's kind of what you anticipate from an RDO. If she's left alone for the 1v1 matchup, she'll typically have the bully overrule in comparison to whoever she's against, unless it's a heavy clearing solo laner. Sobek, you don't pick Sobek solo because you want to win the lane. You pick it because you want to try and win the team fight. fights.
Seems that way thus far, but the rotations from Delny have been pretty decent as he found a pluck earlier on in the game to assist into a kill, as Jelly has 2 deaths already for Obey Alliance. And with this positioning from Jump, I'm expecting a jump over the wall, maybe spotting out some other rotations. Jelly's now going to take command of that position on the left side mid-Harpies.
Keep in mind that Jumpa can sit around all day long in his third ability, considering that he's not revealed unless somebody gets too close. But usually if you get that close to a Circuit hiding in that invis, it means that you're probably where she wanted you to be to begin with.
Blink into the taunt and the poison. Zaxy's going to take a lot of damage, absorb the first tick of the Circuit poison before using his Aegis for the rest of it. Keji being very disciplined, not using that airstrike, because the more valuable play here for Memory Michael is this Gold Fury.
Excellent use of his active. Zaxy making sure that he stays alive during that one, but now Obey has to try and defend in Memory Michael off of this Gold Fury until their Hunters return.
Terra's Blessing being used, diving with the Tiger Jelly, stunning out inbound, not pulling too much triggers here. Crimson holding on to that ultimate for the perfect time. Beautiful stun from a distance there. Crimson on the mark.
But even with the Hide of the Urchin finished off, Jelly is still taking a decent chunk of damage from these thought stuns.
It just doesn't seem that Jelly can really hold in that solo lane. Mifflin trading out with Jump, a lot of damage. Jelly credited with that kill from the Master's Will. Blue buff and speed buff respawning, perfect timing there. Obey Alliance with their first kill of the game and instantly capitalizing with more objectives.
Jelly finally getting revenge onto Jumpa for all those kills early on. Nice little backstep by Jumpa to try and prevent himself from going down to the Tiger stun, but can't get away from that AoE slow.
No, absolutely not. Jelly's going to force out the dash from Keji. Needs to retreat slightly into Zaxy's hand as the red buff will be stripped away, and that's going to really hurt because now Crimson and Keji is going to have a significant disparity in terms of physical and magical power in this next engagement.
Obey's experience as a team is really starting to come to light here. They're taking every single possible opportunity to pressure their advantages whenever they can, and it's very evident that this is a team that has been together for a while just based off of how their movements are so clockwork.
It seems that way. They're just constantly communicating every little cooldown, whether there's relics not available on the opposing team and whether or not the ultimate from Jumpa is on cooldown. That one ability dictates the aggression from Memory of Michael.
Even with Zaxy being the new guy for this team, he's still making such an impact, just holding down his lane no matter how difficult situation.
Oh my goodness.
Speaking of which,
so much damage onto Jumpa there. Only about 3, maybe 4 abilities, and that's the problem with some assassins in the jungle role, which is why we're seeing more and more warriors take that position, trying to be more resilient. Delny caught in a really awkward position as he tried to get a little revenge invade, but stuck in a 1v2. Dwarf's gonna go on in there, gonna get tail flip for his trouble. And that's going to be Terra's Blessing. Where's the action? Oh, I guess it was just slightly miscommunicated there for the right.
Probably just a little bit concerned that Delany might have been in more trouble than what he actually was. Having his pluck off cooldown means that he'll be able to get out of the situation 9 times out of 10.
Jelly not committing to his ultimate to try to dive that tower either. Blinking into Delta Marine, but misses all 3 abilities. That's not what you want out of your jungler. I like the mentality, however, trying to exploit Delta Marine that was left alone.
Looking to force the actives is probably one of the best things Jumpa can do all the time.
It's a bear. It's a bear chasing a crocodile in the tier 2 tower, just like that. Gonna get more pressure in that solo lane. It's already down to half health for Memory of Michael.
And that's all in favor of Dwarves. He's really starting to take advantage of this lane, knowing that he's got enough presence now to ensure that Delany gets forced out consistently.
You ever see that show where it's like Battle of the Animals and whatnot?
I don't think so.
Oh, hold that thought. The Gold Fury going to get started and completed while we were just dilly-dallying around. Obey confirming their first one, 1950 on the clock. Trying to respond in kind, though, as inbound is in the backline. Sprint being popped by Obey Alliance as they try to retreat.
And it's looking like Jumpa wants to go in on Zaxy, missing the taunt, however. Zaxy ready to turn it around, just off the mark, but not with that first one.
The damage is just too much. It's a level 18 Uller firing shots at a level 13 Circuit. The base health pool out of an assassin that's only sitting level 13 can't absorb those kinds of shots without getting something in return, and the positioning just favoring Obey Alliance as they're consistently bullying every member from Memory of Michael in every lane.
And it looks like in Memory of Michael, though, is not trying to let that Gold Fury go unresponded, trying to lock down this Portal Demon. They have the final judgment, but they don't want to commit fully just yet. This Keji's being forced out by the worst.
Terra's Blessing was popped as well. Delta Marine very low. The final judgment not even necessary, as Inbound will get credited for that kill onto the Soul. Inbound going to use that Monolith to heal his teammates for the time being. Pluck onto Dwurst. The stun from Crimson will follow suit, but Dwurst is just baiting for the moment because Jelly is trying to do whatever he can, but it doesn't seem that he can really save his solo laner.
It's not a bait if you end up dead, and sure enough, Delaney's going to be able to clean up Dwurst, and the same might happen to Jelly now as he's caught between 4 members of a Memory of Michael, and sure enough, Jumpa able to put that one away.
No ultimate for Jelly, uses the Ox, trying to disrupt the aggression from Memory of Michael. Both members go down instead of only one, allowing Memory of Michael to start up this Portal Demon, jumping in his Mifflin, strips it away.
Oh my god. Mifflin just absolutely stealing the Portal Demon away from Memory of Michael. Cost him his life, but nobody cares when you're able to secure that objective.
And everyone else from Obey is able to take this portal, getting responses and kills. Delny takes his spill 3 for 1 at the end of the day, but stripping away that Portal Demon allows these 2 hyper carries to dive in. A great blink from Jumpa. The ultimate connects Crimson from a distance.
That was 837 damage on a level 16 Thoth only, and he doesn't even have a 4th item finished yet.
He has literally 50% of his items complete. Only 3. Book of Thoth, Pen Boots, Spear of Desolation. The pen is there. The damage is there. And considering it's only 22 minutes into the game, if I got hit by that, and my name is Delta Marine, I am going to probably build that Stone of Fall.
For a moment, I actually thought that that might clip Zaxi as well, considering how close Zaxi and Delta Marine were to each other after that blink taunt in by Jumpa.
It seems that way. Obey Alliance now still struggling in this game. It's 2-8 in favor of Memory of Michael, but the gold says otherwise. Obey are the ones dictating the objectives. They got the Gold Fury, they stripped away and stolen that Portal Demon, very importantly, and every little objective has been going Obey's way.
It's not even just the gold lead for Obey Alliance, it's also the experience favor as well. They're nearly 6k experience over in Memory of Michael, even though the scoreline reads 8-2.
It's also the disparity in the Hunter position. 2 levels difference here. Zaxi sitting on level 20, level 18 only for Keji, going for this crit option, having Poison Star already complete, probably going to be going for this Deathbringer instead of opting for the Wind Demon right off the bat. But the build coming out of Zaxi is going to do a lot of damage. Titan's Bane, Chin Size, Aussie, the pen's there.
Prioritizing Shred over crit just because he's so concerned about Delaney and Inbound's frontline potential.
Terra
and
Blessing.
Now they're ready to go in.
Terra's Blessing being used, but I think it was a little premature there. Why would you use Terra's Blessing just to try to defend your red buff? No one's really in trouble, and Obey recognizing this, just going to leave Dwurst on the right now just to get some free farm and maybe a tier 2 tower.
Support ult for support ult. However, Inbounds has a little bit more impact in the team fight, but that doesn't seem to matter. Mifflin's getting completely wrecked by Keji.
He's forced to run away with his ultimate. Shell and Sprint being used by Jelly just to disengage. Dwurst not going to get stunned now by the range from Crimson. Bought a little bit of time there in the mid lane. Blinking in his Jumper, finds the Circuit taunt, uses the ultimate just for good measure, but the Disapparate is going to buy Delta Marine a little bit of time, but Delny comes from the waters.
It's not one way, it's the other. Delny with the hot cleanup, trying to find a little bit more action in this mid lane role. Obey Alliance grouping up, looking to defend their T1 tower, but the Gold Fury is going to be responding shortly, and Delta Marine won't be up for it.
Thought Mifflin was about to look for a flank around the corner because of how low Jumpa was, but it doesn't matter since the sustain is showing from Inbound, dropping that Monolith. A 5-on-4 advantage for Memory of Michael for another 20 seconds. Gold Fury is just waiting for them to pluck that one away.
I'd like to see, in memory of Michael, look for the fight around the Gold Fury a little bit easier to play around these monolith routes from inbound, as well as just having Keji to shred the objective.
Ooh, the poke from Zaxi. I think that was only the stun into the one combo against inbound. That's a level 14 Terra. That's a Guardian. Deli's here, though. Plucks Zaxi, forcing the beats. The ultimate from Crimson is being channeled, but it's not being deployed quite yet. Deli forced a shell, hitting two! Zaxi taking a chunk of his health pool alongside Jelly.
And immediately, those two members just trying to lifesteal off in the backside. Zaxi will be fine due to that Aussie proc off of his lifesteal from his axe stance as well.
Already making a presence felt is Jumpa. He's forced to actually disengage against Mifflin. The ultimate from Jumpa is ready. He does have that 20% cooldown reduction from the Yonan's Wrath. Look at what Obey is doing. They're splitting middle and the Gold Fury. They lost the last engagement earlier on, but they're not losing this one.
And inbound might actually be losing his life. Mifflin and Jelly both trying to chase him down. Now Zaxi's actually jumping into the fray, but they're instead going to get poked out by Keji. Dworst is still there, though.
He finds the first kill of this engagement already. Finding that pick was so huge because now they don't have to worry about all the CC coming out of Terra. Considering Obey Alliance can start these objectives with 3 members and still go for a tier 1 mid at the same time, shows how great they are at multitasking.
And speaking of multitasking, Dworst not only shutting out 2 members, but Zaxi killing Delany on the front side. Gold Fury still being unleashed by Delta Marine. Keji trying to get away from Mifflin and Jelly, but you've got 2 warriors holding their controller sticks right at you.
And it's going to be a stun onto Keji. Gold Fury going the way of Obey Alliance, and this lead is starting to build itself into a good spot for Obey. 7,000 in the lead. No hesitation also switching towards that Portal Demon.
Talk about
Fire
a rock in a hard place. Delta Marine and Zaxi, no hesitation whatsoever. Jelly running in just to ensure that they get as much DPS as possible.
No fear out of Obey Alliance, taking full advantage of the respawn timers. From memory of Michael, no contest whatsoever. Crimson didn't really have the mana pool to play with despite having his ultimate. If he uses his wall into Final Judgment, he doesn't have the dash to escape.
Very concise gameplay so far from Obey Alliance, and even when it seemed as though Memory of Michael should have had the lead there, it was entirely Obey in control of the game.
Clock reading 27-22 as the players take a quick pause at this point. Obey Alliance with Fire Giant so quickly just goes to show that this world defending champion is here to stay.
They had zero hesitation moving on straight from Gold Fury mid lane all the way to the Fire Giant, just a complete swing across, which is very ideal for a team. When you recognize that there's 3 members dead on the enemy team, you might as well put as much pressure on the map as possible, knowing that it was only inbound and Crimson, not really enough to try and contest inside the Fire Giant pit.
How can Memory of Michael hold? Is it all in the hands of Crimson?
This is heavily pressured onto Crimson and Keji now even, because Keji has to find the positioning so that he can get free cast off with both his abilities and his auto attacks. His auto attacks more importantly, but it's just so difficult for a crit-oriented build to really have that devastating of an impact when you're up against an RDO, a Raven, and a Sun Wukong who are all building fairly tanky.
So much physical protection on all those 3 gods you just mentioned here, Taco. It's going to be near impossible for Keji to find those kills. He might need to look for such an aggressive hyper play in terms of diving the backline with the rest of his team. If he can find the squishy targets, that's where the crit will be at its most value.
But the other downside aspect here is that there's also a Soul and an Ullr to worry about, just in case you had your mind and attention purely on those 3 frontliners. How do you get away from the tower shred by Ullr and Soul? You've got that power boost from Ullr's second ability into his auto attacks, and I mean, Delta Marine is Delta Marine. He'll find a way every time.
And then there's also the Shogun's Kusari coming out of Jelly just to get that 25% attack speed for those 2 in-hand hunters, whether it's physical or magical. Obey Alliance don't care. They stripped away all 3 tier 2 towers, still having Fire Giant for an additional 2 more minutes. Gives them plenty of time to try to slowly chip away at these Phoenixes.
And take a look at Zaxi actually representing top of the player damage charts on this Ullr. Odysseus bow actually going to continue continue providing him with even more support in that regard, since he'll be able to just continuously spread that damage.
Oh, misclicking Jumpa, tried to blink, uses the beats. He connects on Zaxi with the poison taunt, but not wanting to use the ultimate. Delny will plug Delta Marine back in, forcing out his Aegis, as Inbound uses the Terra's Blessing. The final judgment, clipping Delta Marine. Inbound with the credit, the last hit. Yet again, another beautiful plug from Delny, connects onto Jelly. He's going to take a spill, but not until Jumpa gets responded to.
Delny was trying to cut off Zaxi's escape with that tail whip, unfortunately unable to connect, and instead Zaxi's going to split off to that right-hand side of the map, while Mifflin and Dwers are left to try and defend from In Memory of Michael. And
something I've learned today from watching these games is, like, whoever has the Fire Giant buff is not safe. It's not the actual team you want to be in, because it seems that the defense has been so good. Delny with a nice pluck onto Dwers. He's getting really low, gonna heal a little bit from that third ability. Tier 1 tower still being held onto from Obey. Very comfortable commanding lead from Obey. Despite not getting any Phoenixes, they got all the towers, and Gold Fury building a 13,000 gold lead.
Dwers' life just got blessed by that Mantle of Discord passive, stunning out everybody around him. Nothing like having a mini Gebalt on your side. But either way, Obey Alliance able to hang on to their T1 tower. But the same could be said for In Memory of Michael. When you're up against a full Fire Giant team and you're still able to successfully defend your Phoenixes, that is always a win.
We were talking about what ways Michael needed to do in order to stay in this game, and that right there, the ultimate from Crimson, took out Delta Marina. Without your soul to be able to melt some of these Phoenixes, it's only up to Zaxi to try to chip it away, and that might not be enough.
Fortunately enough for In Memory of Michael, nobody from Obey, I think, recognized Jumpa or heard the active sound from his Purification beat. So when he initially blinked in, Zaxi immediately dropped his actives instead of looking for the turnaround CC stun, because if Jumpa gets picked at the start of that, and rather than forcing out Zaxi and his actives, Obey Alliance could have potentially killed at least 1 or 2 members.
Jumpa trying to make something happen here around the bottom of his own blue buff, but I'm looking at the mini-map, and I gotta look at that one Sentry Ward. Hold that thought, though. Delny got stunned out, forced to use his ultimate. Dwers thinking about chasing that down, but going back to what I was talking about, is that one Sentry Ward between the middle and the left-hand side is where Jumpa was positioned, making sure that he got the right flanking angle with the blink. Whenever you're sieging Phoenixes, if you control those two corridors between middle and left and then middle and right, those are the two angles that you can approach from.
Not to mention, one of the more famous Thoth warding spots is also right in front of the Phoenixes along those walls, because there are so many times where teammates from the enemy team will try to move across that area, sweeping across quickly to secure the Phoenixes, but Thoth is Thoth. He likes to shoot stuff through walls. You know,
Bay likes to secure objectives as they secure their second Fire Giant. Memory of Michael a little bit too low in the gold count to leave their base. It's too risky to take a team fight outside of their Phoenixes. They need that 6th man advantage to try to get back into this one.
I think another thing that In Memory of Michael is lacking this game, even though they have the Circuit, they could have probably used a little bit more anti-heal rather than just relying entirely on that Cobra's Kiss and the Sickening Strike from Delny. It can be pretty understandable why that would be overlooked, but there's a decent amount of healing coming out from Dwers.
Crimson charging up that final judgment. The root is good, hitting 3 members in the back. The rest of Obey are forced to retreat. Sprint being popped. The pluck is good onto Delta Marine. Tell me if you heard this story yet again, as Delta Marine forced to retreat. Dwers trying to run left, sacrificing himself so the rest of his team could survive.
And that was all on Delany, looking to chase down the hyper carry, but the rest of his team making sure to lock out Dwers. That way they don't have to worry about that annoying CC presence.
I'm telling you, it's all up to Crimson. Do or die under the top hands. It's just so much damage. He had 3 members after a beautiful setup from Inbound. The Root setting up the final judgment. Beautiful display of Smite.
The problem here, Toli, is that this game is only getting later, and so are these death respawn timers. Dwers, fortunate enough that his team was in the favorable end of that, and having Fire Giant means that In Memory of Michael isn't really looking to push into this team. They'll take the picks if they can find them, but they don't really want to chase or overextend. Otherwise, that could very easily turn into Obey Alliance's favor.
However, it's getting closer and closer to the point where Obey is sitting at completed 6. item build. Zaxi with the Odysseus bow having a lot of attack speed. He could just easily sit on any sort of melee character to be able to chain lightning off of them.
The main concern here is how effective is it going to be for Obey Alliance to keep trying to knock out these Phoenixes if they keep running into the Thoth ults from Crimson. Crimson has just managed to find at least one person every single time, and that's all you need to do. Even if you don't kill them, the amount of damage that Crimson is outputting right now is absolutely absurd.
So do you do what, a 1-4 split, 2-3 split, stick to 5 people in one lane?
I wouldn't mind seeing Obey push up at least one other lane and then splitting the other one just to break up In Memory of Michael, force them to defend at least 2 lanes at the same time the next time they have a Fire Giant Siege in their favor.
Especially if that one person is going to be Mifflin, because he can easily just walk past the Phoenix if need be, take those 2 to 3 Phoenix shots, get behind the Thoth, keep Crimson busy so he can't just patiently set up his own ultimate off of the roof from inbound.
At the same time, I also understand Obey's patience in not wanting to split apart their team composition. Speaking of which, they're trying to break off into Keji.
Oh my goodness, that was a stun, and 2 out of 3 hits. No Final Judgment was used there, and already Zaxi, sitting at 20% health, is forced to retreat. He's looking for any sort of lifesteal that he can get, and there's only the left mids and the back lefts for him to claim.
Unfortunately, he won't have that Aussie proc this time around, but it's still plenty of lifesteal in his favor. Axe form, one of the best forms of lifesteal. Now Delanig actually getting aggressed on, but he's looking to make it happen.
Final Judgment.
Delta Marine's health, where did it go?
Right again, Final Judgment onto Delta Marine. However, the rest of Memory of Michael can't leave their Phoenixes to chase out and clean up the damage that Crimson did. Luckily enough for Obey Alliance, now that they survived this one ability, they can aggress here. That's going to be a long cooldown.
There's still plenty more damage to come, though. If you take a look at how much Crimson's outputting right now into Mifflin, inbounds breaking off into the ultimate, and now Jumpa is getting pretty aggressive.
Jumpa trying to force Mifflin out. He will do so successfully. Supernova not really on the mark onto anybody, and this is just a patient waiting game. Is Obey Alliance. They have nothing to really rush. The Fire Giant buff already fizzled away from them. It's another 40 seconds until that one responds, and despite not finding any Phoenixes, they're not allowing Memory of Michael to farm.
In Memory of Michael, though, they're still relatively close to approaching that level 20 mark. The only ones really missing it are the support and the jungler, and Jumpa, his main priority is to just CC somebody down with his kit. That's all he needs to look for is the setup for Crimson. But Crimson's damage alone has been enough to deter every single one of these Phoenix Sieges.
Jumpa's been doing his job. Crimson has certainly been doing his job. Everyone from Memory of Michael have been, successfully able to defend this mid to late game portion, and unfortunately just couldn't secure a lot of these Gold Furies, slipping it into the hands of Obey Alliance, and that's something that can easily get fixed throughout the weeks of the SCL.
Obey certainly got the early game advantage. Even though Memory of Michael was finding the picks and kills, they weren't finding the objectives afterwards, and that kind of shows the new experience for the team, even though these are seasoned members.
Obey Alliance with the 3rd Fire Giant of the game, approaching the 38-minute mark. The rest of Memory of Michael, recognizing this, has to concede all the positioning. Obey Alliance are going to start slowly trickling down the mid lane. They have the vision around the right side, but they don't have that sentry ward, importantly, on the left. Crimson, though, is trying to line up some shots here, but no one from Obey Alliance is crossing that line yet.
I think Mifflin only wants to go onto Crimson. Crimson's charging up that Final Judgment, able to release, catches everyone.
Zaxi taking a lot of damage, but Jumpa fell first. Obey Alliance with a 5-on-4 for 55 seconds. Jumping in the back is Jelly. Nice stun, setting up Zaxi for a lot of damage. Delta Marine finally gets taken out by Crimson. 2 for 1 at the end of the day, but Obey Alliance got what they came for.
And that's all that they needed, was to put on some pressure from Memory of Michael.
Worst. A lot of damage with a nice stun to setup, but no follow-up. That trying to defend their right side Phoenix instead in the waters is Downly, and will defend his Phoenix successfully.
They need Keji, and Crimson has to back off now. This is one of the only downsides of only having one Hypercarry alive. Inbound instead, trading out his life so his mid laner can get away.
Once you see that Tiger stun, you gotta bite the bullet for your mid mage. A true support inbound is, whether or not he sets up his mid laner for the damage or sacrifices his own life to ensure the safety of Crimson.
Either way, it's not just Inbound's life that goes down, but the right-hand Phoenix as well. And Delaney could be shortly after. Beautiful final judgment from Crimson, but just too many members from Obey Alliance alive to still be able to take out that left side Phoenix.
Imagine if Crimson was full build here. He only has 5 items. I think he's probably building into the Chronos Pen and trying to get more ultis off, more dashes for the stunts and the setups. And once he gets that item, that's a lot of cooldown reduction.
The only real big magical protection that Mifflin has right now is from that Mantle of Discord, and that's just not enough. Even though it can provide a solid CC moment with that 1 second stun if you go underneath a certain HP threshold, it's not enough considering he doesn't have health.
You also have that shifter shield, so he's heavily relying on that overhead kick and the Mystic Rush ultimate, trying to get that damage reduction. I think it's still 40% here at max rank, and that's a lot of damage reduction to ensure the safety, even against a Thoth ultimate.
And check out Zaxi right now, just popped that 3K pot, and he had a regular pot as well, so can imagine that Obey Alliance is looking to make this a quick siege of the Titans.
Zaxi with second top player damage in the game. No surprise that Crimson is sitting pretty, almost nearing that 40,000 damage marker.
This has really been a battle of damage between Zaxi and Crimson for sure. Crimson seeming to get the better end of it. It's just that, unfortunately, his team is getting picked before they can make full use of it.
It just doesn't seem that Memory of Michael can penetrate past the front line from Obey Alliance. There's so much control here as Dwarves can cripple multiple members with that field, stunning them out to follow, whereas Jelly can knock him up with the Ox. Mifflin continuously being a nuisance in the back line, and it's Obey Alliance leading the charge down the mid. Delny gets stunned out. He's trying to run away, lurking in the water underneath. Again, Delta Marine in the back gets clipped by the final judgment. Still fine though, considering he's going to sustain it up.
And unfortunately for Delaney, he couldn't get away after plucking Dwarves, but Keji finding Zaxi right away. Crits coming up huge right there.
Oh no, Zaxi, what were you doing? But diving past the Titan as Crimson falls. There are 2 waves of fire minions for Obey Alliance. All of them are committing towards this Titan. It is a little low here, Taco. And first game will be credited for Obey Alliance.
And that's really